We must be careful not to discourage our 12-year-olds by making them waste the best years of their lives preparing for examinations. If science ceases to be a rebellion against authority, then it does not deserve the talents of our brightest children. The public has a distorted view of science because children are taught in school that science is a collection of firmly established truths. In fact, science is not a collection of truths. It is a continuous exploration of mysteries. It is remarkable that mind enters into our awareness of nature on two separate levels. At the highest level, the level of human consciousness, our minds are somehow directly aware of the complicated flow of electrical and chemical patterns in our brains. At the lowest level, the level of single atoms and electrons, the mind of an observer is again involved in the description of events. Between lies the level of molecular biology, where mechanical models are adequate and mind appears to be irrelevant. But I, as a physicist, cannot help suspecting that there is a logical connection between the two ways in which mind appears in my universe. I cannot help thinking that our awareness of our own brains has something to do with the process which we call observation in atomic physics. That is to say, I think consciousness is not just a passive epiphenomenon carried along by the chemical events in our brains, but is an active agent forcing the molecular complexes to make choices between one quantum state and another. In other words, mind is already inherent in every electron, and the processes of human consciousness differ only in degree, but not in kind, from the processes of choice between quantum states, which we call chance, when they are made by electrons. We should try to introduce our children to science today as a rebellion against poverty and ugliness, and militarism and economic injustice. To give us room to explore the varieties of mind and body into which our genome can evolve, one planet is not enough. Science is my territory, but science fiction is the landscape of my dreams. The more I examine the universe and the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe, in some sense, must have known we were coming. It is our task, both in science and in society at large, to prove the conventional wisdom wrong, and to make our unpredictable dreams come true. A good scientist is a person with original ideas. A good engineer is a person who makes a design that works with as few original ideas as possible. It is better to be wrong than to be vague. It is characteristic of all deep human problems that they are not to be approached without some humor and some bewilderment. The glory of science is to imagine more than we can prove. The whole point of science is that most of it is uncertain. That's why science is exciting, because we don't know. Science is all about things we don't understand. The public, of course, imagines science is just a set of facts, but it's not. Science is a process of exploring, which is always partial. We explore, and we find out things that we understand. We find out things we thought we understood were wrong. That's how it makes progress. Sanity is, in essence, nothing more than the ability to live in harmony with nature's laws. The conservative has little to fear from the man whose reason is the servant of his passions, but let him beware of him in whom reason has become the greatest and most terrible of passions. These are the wreckers of outworn empires. The non-living universe is as diverse and as dynamic as the living universe, and is also dominated by patterns of organization that are not yet understood. The reason Dick's, Richard P. Feynman, physics was so hard for ordinary people to grasp was that he did not use equations. The usual theoretical physics that was done since the time of Newton was to begin by writing down some equations, and then to work hard, calculating solutions of the equations. This was the way Hans and Oppie and Julian Schwinger did physics. Dick just wrote down the solutions out of his head, without ever writing down the equations. He had a physical picture of the way things happen, and the picture gave him the solutions directly, with a minimum of calculation. It was no wonder that people who had spent their lives solving equations were baffled by him. Their minds were analytical. His was pictorial. We do not need to have an agreed set of goals before we do something ambitious. For many scientists less divinely gifted than Einstein, the chief reward for being a scientist is not the power and the money, but the chance of catching a glimpse of the transcendent beauty of nature. The beauty in the genome is, of course, that it's so small. The human genome is only on the order of a gigabyte of data, which is a tiny little database. If you take the entire living biosphere, that's the assemblage of 20 million species or so that constitute all the living creatures on the planet, and you have a genome for every species, the total is still about 1 petabyte. That's 1,000,000 gigabytes. That's still very small compared with Google or the Wikipedia, and it's a database that you can easily put in a small room, easily transmit from one place to another. And somehow, Mother Nature manages to create this incredible biosphere, to create this incredibly rich environment of animals and plants with this amazingly small amount of data. The essential fact which emerges is that the 3 smallest and most active reservoirs of carbon in the global carbon cycle, the atmosphere, the plants, and the soil, are all of roughly the same size. This means that large human disturbance of any kind of these reservoirs will have large effects on all 3. We cannot hope either to understand or to manage the carbon in the atmosphere unless we understand and manage the trees and the soil too. My message is that science is a human activity, and the best way to understand it is to understand the individual human beings who practice it. The question that will decide our destiny is not whether we shall expand into space. It is, shall we be one species or a million? A million species will not exhaust the ecological niches that are awaiting the arrival of intelligence.